welcome to Master Your Stress. We're going to talk about how to boost your focus, reduce stress, and work better. So you are very welcome. For those of you who don't know me well, I am Dr. Leonora Rhodes. I am a physician turned brain health expert and life coach and corporate trainer. And I love doing this kind of work. I've got a lot of knowledge stuffed into this 3 pound brain of mine, and I love sharing it with other people. So you are very welcome to join me here today. So I always like to begin with a mindful moment. I don't know when you come to these calls, what's happened in the day before. So let's just do a 2-minute mindfulness practice to make sure that you are de-stressed and ready to learn going into this. So we're going to do a breathing exercise. And if you're driving, please do not follow along with this. Just listen. But if you want to put your feet on the floor, put your right hand on your tummy or belly, just above your belly button, and just focus for a moment on your breath. Feel your hand rise and fall with every breath in and out. Breathing in and out. And with the next breath in, feel your tummy move out. This means that we're sucking in maximum air into your lungs. As you breathe out, tummy goes in, forcing the air out of your lungs. Breathing in, tummy goes out. Breathing out, tummy goes in. Breathing in, tummy goes out. Breathing out, tummy goes in. Now just return your breath to normal. But notice the rising and falling of your hand. Now place your hand on your chest and once again feel the rising of your hand as you breathe in and out. Breathing in, relaxation. Breathing out, any worries. Breathing in and out. Now I want you to bring your hands together and start to rub your hands together to create some heat. Open your eyes and shake those arms out. Wonderful. Shake your arms out to the front, out to the ceiling, out to the sides. Wonderful. So hopefully we are all nice and relaxed, but also a little bit focused and ready to learn. So what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about why stress is bad for you and why it's bad for you, especially if you're in business. We're going to talk about the neuroscience of stress. We're going to talk about 4 steps to master stress. And this is kind of a signature formula that I've come up with. I forgot to mention, I suffered with severe chronic stress for about 15 years. And so I know it firsthand, and it's what got me really obsessed with learning about it professionally and helping other people to master it too. I want you to get the very best out of our time together today. So please pay full attention, take notes and do the exercises. And it's all very well to learn intellectually, but I'd love you if there are things that you hear today that make you realize that you need to make change, please commit to making change. And we're going to save questions till the very end. First exercise. What has been your highest stress level in the past week? And here we're going to use a scale of 0 to 10, and 10 being the very most stressed you've ever been in your life. So no 15s or anything like that. Next, I want you to think about, how does stress show up for you? Does it show up physically? Does it show up mentally? Does it show up in your behavior? Does it show up in your relationships? Just very quickly write down a few things that you know that stress affects in you and your life. And then last question, how good are you at managing stress? And here the scale is kind of the opposite of the stress scale. So if you are the best person in the world at managing stress, you would give yourself a 10. If you would consider yourself one of the worst, you'd give yourself a 1 or a 0. So please be realistic here. Excellent, excellent. Fantastic. So let's talk quickly about the science of stress. I am a really big neuroscience nerd, and with stress, I believe it can be really, really helpful to understand what's going on in the brain. People often think that there's something wrong with them because they get stressed, or that they're going crazy, or that they're a bit of a failure in life when they get stressed. But I want you to know that stress is biological, and I'm going to tell you quickly what is going on in your brain and nervous system when you get stressed. First, quick definition. So stress is a natural, physiological, and psychological response to a perceived threat, which has a profound impact on the functioning of the brain and body. More on that in a moment. Now, stress can be appropriate and positive. It can be small doses for a brief time. By the way, a brief episode of stress is called acute stress. It can be inappropriate or negative. It can be disproportionate to what is going on, or it can be chronic, or otherwise known as long-lasting. So the term overwhelm, people often use it. On many, many coaching calls, clients will start by saying, I am so overwhelmed. And I explain to them that overwhelm is a specific type of stress that is often described as a feeling of being buried or drowning beneath a huge mass of responsibility. And it is too much to do, but it's also having a lack of a plan. That's what leads to overwhelm. So, as you can imagine, when I work with people one-on-one, I'll say to them, okay, you do have a lot to do. So the first thing that we need to do is make a plan, because as soon as you've made a plan, your subconscious mind is able to say, yeah, there is a lot to do, but I have a plan, so it's okay. Burnout is the physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion accompanied by decreased motivation, lowered performance, and negative attitudes towards oneself and others. And it can be due to extreme or prolonged stress, physical or mental exertion, or an overburdening of workload. These can all take their toll. Now, the term burnout officially is meant to be around work. However, it can also be work outside of the workplace. Carers often experience burnout. Parents often experience burnout. So it isn't just in the workplace, although it is a big problem. The term, I believe, is overused a lot. It really is the kind of end stage of stress when, the runaway train is out of control, and this person is going to have a crash if they don't do something about it. So, burnout isn't a little bit of mild stress. Burnout is when it's really, really bad. So what's going on in the brain and nervous system? So this event happens that you perceive to be a threat, and then your brain sends nervous signals to the whole body, and the whole nervous system becomes aroused, wakened up. And this happens in the whole of the body and the brain. We also get the hormonal system being triggered. We have cortisol and adrenaline are the two main hormones that are circulating in your body when you're stressed. This is an acute stress situation. Your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure increases, your muscle tension goes up, you'll kind of get your body ready to run away. Your breathing rate goes up, and your digestion and your reproductive systems slow, because if you're about to get eaten by a tiger, it doesn't really matter whether you're digesting your food or whether you're having babies. You just need to get out of that situation. And so this is often called the fight, flight, or freeze response. And this gets you ready to either deal with the stress, get away from it, or withdraw. And so sometimes the freeze response is more people get kind of paralyzed and they don't know what to do with it, and they kind of disassociate and hope that it will go away. Not a very effective strategy if you're dealing with a saber-toothed tiger, but maybe an okay strategy in modern life. So this is arousal level in the brain. And so if you have a brain that isn't chronically stressed, it is starting at a low level. So this is how awake your brain and nervous system, how active they are. And so if you have a low level of underlying stress, when a stressful event happens, let's face it, they do, you get triggered into the stress reaction. All of these things happen in your body, and then you recover and you go back to normal. And how long that takes depends on the person. And as you can see, most of the time, you're never going to reach the trigger point for behavioral change. So that's a non-stress brain. However, if you are a chronically stressed person, your underlying level of arousal will be chronically higher. And so what happens is when a stressful event happens, because it will, then you get triggered into stress more easily. Your stress reaction is bigger and recovery is slower. You may also be triggered into behavioral change, and you may even reach the point of no return. The point of no return is when you have totally lost it. And by the way, I totally raise my hand here. I've done that. I've done that many times when the stress is just out of control. I work with a lot of families with neurodiverse children. This is really common with them when they kind of like they've become I say to the parents, the child has become like an angry alligator. You can't negotiate with somebody who's in that really over-aroused level. Their brain is operating like our reptilian ancestors, and you can't negotiate with them. So, why is stress so harmful? So, this is chronic stress. This is what many of us are living with today. It is the drip, drip, drip of stressful events occurring in our life. All of these events our brain is perceiving as a threat. So we get this chronic over-arousal, like I just described, of the nervous system with perhaps periods of exhaustion. The nervous system cannot keep up that level of arousal for long, long periods of time. Thank goodness we're forced into sleep. So what happens is you end up with increased heart rate and increased blood pressure, which is clearly not very good for your heart and your cardiovascular system. You end up with fast, shallow breathing, which means you're getting less oxygen in. And by the way, the meditation that we did was diaphragmatic breathing, and it's one of the fastest ways to reduce stress and to get more oxygen into your system. We also get increased muscle tension, so aches, pains, you're more prone to injury, inflammation in the whole body, maybe a bit of brain fog, digestion slows down, immune system is suppressed, metabolism is affected, and chronic stress puts people at higher risk of diabetes. We also get hormone imbalances, reproductive system problems, hypervigilance, which is like constantly being worried. Brain function is affected, which then goes on to cause mental health problems. We also get skin problems and sleep problems, etc. Most of the bad things that can happen in your body are worsened by stress. So it can impact your mental health. It can cause or worsen physical health problems, increases your chances of getting all of the major chronic illnesses. It can cause you to gain weight. I raise my hand to emotional eating. The science on this is really interesting. When you are chronically stressed, you have an increased appetite for carbohydrates and weight gain in the abdomen. Your body is basically saying to you that you need to eat as much as you can because you don't know when the next, threat is going to come. We also get faster aging in every cell of your body. The research shows that your telomeres, which are the protective caps on the end of your DNA, shorten, meaning that your cells die more quickly, and also collagen is damaged. So it can make you look older. Reduced performance in all you do, and also reduced quality of life. I lived with chronic stress for 15 years. I do not recommend it. It isn't good for overall quality of life. So also, chronic stress also affects your performance. And so this graph that you see, it's a very oversimplified graph. So this is arousal level of the brain, like I've been talking about, how awake your brain is. If your brain is under aroused, meaning that doesn't have enough energy, it's not working hard enough, we get this with boredom, and we get this when we're tired or sick. And here we make what's called omission errors. This is when we forget to do things. Then there's at the other end of the spectrum is hyperaroused. This is the chronic stress. So anxiety, exhaustion, chronic stress. And here people tend to make commission errors. So their brain is effectively malfunctioning. And so they do things, but they do them wrong. It's really funny. I took a long walk the other day and I came back a little bit exhausted. Within the first 5 minutes of getting into my house, I dropped three things. And I think my body was just very, very tired. So we do things, but we make mistakes. And then, of course, we have this sweet spot in the middle where the arousal level of the brain is just right, and we can perform at a normal level. So I'm actually not going to go through this slide, but stress has a huge impact on relationships and communication. You can all read this. When I'm coaching people, I coach a lot of executives, and they will often either they'll be stressed or they will be dealing with somebody who's stressed. And it leads to irrational behavior, and things just never go as well. If you're communicating when you're in a stress state, it's not going to go well, and relationships can be severely impacted by that. So, if you're in business, you should be paying attention to chronic stress. So, in the US alone, it is said that $30 billion are lost every year due to chronic stress. And it's probably underestimated. This stuff's pretty hard to measure. And that's due to absenteeism, medical costs, mistakes like I just talked about, and also turnover. A chronically stressed employee is much more likely to leave. 12 billion workdays are lost globally due to stress, and this is stats from the World Health Organization. And the global economic cost is said to be 1 trillion a year from anxiety and depression in the workplace. And I think when I was a GP, it was said that depression was the number one reason. I think depression and back pain are the two top reasons why people go to see their internal medicine doctor or their general practitioner. And I know you're probably all in super small businesses, but if you're in a large business, the cost per 1,000 employees is 5.3 million due to extra spend on all these things that we've just talked about. If stress were to show up as a line in your profit and loss, you would demand action. This is a big drain on your business. So how does it show up in organizations? We've talked about how it shows up in the individual, but we get productivity loss. And it's not that the person is lazy, it's just that they are chronically stressed and they have what's called cognitive overload. And this is the first time I've mentioned it. Your working memory, your ability to hold things in your mind so that you can work on them, that goes down too. Then we get increased mistakes, like I just talked about, poor decision making as well. Sick days increase, and then that has a ripple effect on everybody who's still working in the business. And engagement plummets. Constant stress leads people to check out, even high performers. And, I talk to a lot of people who are like, I've been working really, really hard for a long time. It seems to have no rewards for me. So why bother? And so, even really high performers can check out. And high performers often hide stress until it surfaces as absenteeism, illness, or sudden departure. And leaders must spot the patterns early. And I often say to people, if you ignore stress for too long, your body will eventually force you to pay attention to it. And that's happened to me a couple of times. So the cost categories: absenteeism. High stress employees are more likely to take 8 times more likely to take sick days and to file more claims. When they're present, they're not really present. They're not really paying attention. Then we have turnover, and it can take 6 to 9 months to replace an employee. And then we have errors and risk as well. Stressed employees are 11 times more likely to make mistakes. And then, of course, if you have a lot of people stressed in a business, it affects culture and erodes trust, creativity, and psychological safety. It's not good. Um, so why this often gets missed in businesses. Stress risk isn't just an individual issue. People often don't share that they're stressed and they don't tell people, and people might not be aware. They might just see a change in behavior. And the truth is that stress is not just an individual issue, it's a problem with the organizational design. And we often confuse stress with drive. High effort doesn't always mean health and good productivity. And I get a lot of high performers that say to that to me, I don't want to get rid of my stress because it's what drives me. But that is a fallacy. You would do much better if you weren't stressed because you'd still be somebody who cares and is ambitious and, would work hard. People are often using the wrong metrics, measuring engagement and not exhaustion, and someone can have both. There is a stigma. Admitting stress is still seen as a weakness in many leadership cultures. And people often, talk about symptoms rather than systems. Meditation apps won't fix a broken workload model or toxic leadership. So this is, when chronic stress occurs in a lot of people in a business, it's a systemic problem and it mustn't be ignored. So why does it happen in business? Well, it can come from an unrelenting pace. I actually work with a marketing company where the pace is extremely fast, and it tends to get to people after a while. That kind of always on, no buffer time, constant fire drills will eventually get to even the strongest person. Ambiguous priorities, when everything is a priority and then nothing is. When you put too much on a person's plate and you tell them it's all needed now, then they can't do it all now. So that is a problem. Lack of autonomy. Micromanagement crushes agency. People who feel that their boss is constantly watching over them, nitpicking, expecting them to fail, that causes a lot of stress. People often get it as well from no recognition. I've had a lot of clients who are like, I work really hard. I've asked for a pay rise. The company's dragging its heels. That becomes very stressful. And then a culture of silence. There are a lot of companies. I had a client who worked for Bridgewater, which has a culture of being a brutish company and criticizing people openly, and people don't feel safe to speak up. And no recovery time, back-to-back meetings, no time to think, reflect, or recharge. And I will often say to my clients, what will you do this week to de-stress? And, a lot of people are working through lunchtime. It's a terrible, terrible idea. Okay, so let's get to the good stuff. Let's get to the solution to all of this stress. I came up with this strategy. Like I said, I had severe chronic stress for a long, long time. I've read a ton of the neuroscience on this, and there's a lot out there. And I wanted to simplify it. I love either 3 or 4 step strategies. So this is my 4-step strategy to manage stress. It comes in 2 phases, as it were. The first is prevention, reducing the likelihood of stress ever happening. We're going to talk about brain health and reducing triggers. The second phase is that sometimes it is going to happen. So when it happens, you want to have self-awareness, and then you want to have a toolkit. You want to know that you're getting stressed so that you can do something about it. So one of my favorite things to talk about is brain health. I gave a big talk on Friday night about brain health. A healthy brain, remember we talked about arousal levels of the brain and how, if your brain is chronically aroused, it's going to get stressed more often. A healthy brain naturally has a lower level or a healthier level of arousal, and an unhealthy brain may have a higher level. Not always, because sometimes a very unhealthy brain can lead to low levels of arousal. For example, if you have a high fever, it usually actually makes your brain more sleepy while you're dealing with the fever. But if you have a chronically unhealthy brain, especially if it's inflamed, the underlying level of arousal of the brain is going to be um, higher. And so, like I said earlier, a brain with a higher level of arousal of the brain is going to get stressed more easily. The stress reaction is going to be bigger. It is going to recover slower. It's going to be triggered into behavioral change, and it may even reach the point of no return. So it benefits you to have a healthy brain. So, as you may know, as doctors, when we study medicine, even the initial training for me, I studied in the UK. It was 5 years of training, and then you keep on learning when you go into your specialty. I think in the US it's 4 years, but there's a lot to learn. Health is like a really, really complicated subject. When I was writing my book several years ago, I wanted to come up with a really simple way of thinking about health. So I want to encourage you to think of health as a balancing act. We have on one side of the balance, health assets. These are the things that are good for your brain. Healthy breathing. We just did diaphragmatic breathing at the beginning. Are you eating a balanced, brain-friendly diet? Are you hydrating yourself well? Your brain especially needs a lot of water. Are you engaging in positive thinking? When you think positive thoughts, it releases positive neurochemicals and makes your brain healthier. Are you engaging in mindfulness practice? Getting enough exercise. Exercise is one of the best things that you can do for your brain. You need to be exercising, getting movement in every single day. Sleep, super important. This is when your brain cleans itself, processes emotions from the day, and stores information in long-term storage so that it's available for future use. Then we have healthy habits, positive relationships, super important for the brain. As you'll see in a second, negative relationships are bad for your brain. We humans are social creatures. We need to spend time with people who are good for us. Then we have hygiene, like brushing your teeth and keeping your body clean. New learning, very, very important, especially as you get older. And fun and laughter. And somebody mentioned earlier that, one of their biggest de-stressors is spending time with their family, who they clearly get on with. So we've got some positive relationships going on there. Hopefully you have some fun and laughter with your family. So all of these things we should be doing regularly to, to be good for our brain. If I was to prioritize the top five, I always say diet, exercise, stress management, which we're doing now, positive social interaction, and sleep. If you only have time for five, do those top five and do them well. Health liabilities, some of them are the opposites. Dehydration. The first place it affects is your brain. It gives you a headache. It makes you sluggish, not good for you. Unhealthy diet. What we're talking about here is either a diet that is unhealthy for you. For example, I have a friend who is allergic to kiwi fruits. For her, eating kiwi fruits is an unhealthy diet for her. But for most people, we're talking about an unhealthy diet would be a highly processed diet that has a lot of refined sugars, unhealthy fats, and inflammatory foods. When you look at the list of ingredients on the food item, there's like 30 things and you don't recognize the name of most of them. That's not really healthy food. Inactivity, it's as bad for you as smoking, it is said. Engaging in unhealthy habits, avoiding medical care if you have a medical problem. And I come across this a lot. Go and see your doctor. That no matter what is going on, it is highly likely that early intervention will lead to a better outcome. Consuming too much media, I raised my hand for that. Um, we need to be really, really careful of that. It's pretty toxic, and the news channels do not have your best interest in mind. They are trying to sell advertising. Overuse of technology, contact with poisons and toxins, infections, of course. I had severe COVID pneumonia, which caused me, I had 5 months plus of severe brain fog. Don't recommend it. Physical harm, emotional harm, including stress, and extremes of weight. Being too thin or being too heavy is not good for your brain. Um, and I'm rushing through this, clearly I could talk for for hours on each of these things. A step two is reducing your stress triggers. And the really interesting thing about stress triggers is it's all about perspective. I often get people, either parents or people in business, saying to me, I don't understand why this thing is stressing that person. But the truth is that stress is all about perspective. And if somebody says that X causes them stress, it does, whether you understand it or not. And the same goes for you. Other people don't have to understand what causes you stress. That is your reality. So don't ever apologize for the things that are causing you stress. Common triggers. This is the research shows external stresses. The top one is money, then work, economy, family responsibility, relationships, health. Interestingly, health of family members is slightly higher than health of self. Then we also have internal things. Most of our stress today comes from within our own mind. It can be depression, anxiety, worry, negative thinking, regret, anger, jealousy, guilt. Let go of those. They're not good for anybody. Overreacting and failure to take action. So once you reduce your triggers, first of all, you want to classify them. Are they within my control or are they not? If they are within your control, do something to reduce or eliminate the trigger. So, for example, if you're stressed because you found a mole on your cheek that looks a bit strange and it's stressing you out, go and see your doctor. That will reduce or eliminate the trigger and you can deal with it. If you're getting triggered by the news, that is not within your control. And I would highly recommend you accept that stressor occurs, and instead of focusing your energy on the stressor, you focus your energy on taking personal responsibility and reducing your own stress. And we're going to come on to that in a minute. Step three is awareness. What you're not aware of, you cannot change. And most of this stuff is going on in the subconscious mind. So you've seen this graph a couple of times already. So this is the stressed brain. Now, we have this wonderful thing called the window of opportunity. Before you reach the point of no return, and that circle is actually bigger than it should be. It should go from the start of the stressor to the point of no return. In that early phase of being stressed, you can do something about it. Once you reach the point of no return, you can't. You're like an angry alligator, like I mentioned earlier. So you want to do something in this window of opportunity, and that's what we're coming on to in step 4, to stop the stress train in its tracks. So here's a tool. I developed this tool. There's lots of other tools like this. When I was a GP, I used to do assessments of like whether people had anxiety and depression. Problem with those scales is they're long and you can't do them every day. And you also don't want to repeat them too often because people get used to the questions. So here's a really simple scale. Some of these scales go from 0 to 10. I wanted to have it -10 to +10 so that it was more obvious when you're dipping into the negative side. So -10 is intensely negative. This is the worst thing that ever happened to you. +10 It's the best thing that that ever happened to you. For me, it's being in the Taj Mahal as the sun rose at 6 a.m. in the morning. It was the most amazing experience, amazingly positive experience I've ever had in my life. Now, most of us are not spending much time at -10, hopefully, or at +10. We are spending most of our time around neutral. I send this card to all of my clients and I tell them to keep it with them all the time so that they can check in. And if you keep looking at this every day for 5 days, you will get much, much better at knowing where you are. And so the idea is if you notice that you're dipping into the negative, you must stop what you're doing, even if it's for 2 minutes, to reset your brain and nervous system. Don't carry on because, like we talked about, anything that you do in a stress state, you will not be doing as well as if you were doing it in a non-stress state. So, take a picture of this, keep it on your phone. And it really, if you start using this, you dramatically increase awareness of how you're feeling, and then you have power. So, quick question. I want you to write down where you are now. So let's give it a quick practice. Where are you now? Anywhere between -10 and +10. Fantastic. Step 4 is the stress toolkit. So you've got stressed. Now, what are the tools you're going to use to reduce it? Stress is a sneaky thing. It doesn't always show up in the same way. And I'm a huge believer that you need multiple tools. I use meditation and mindfulness a lot. There are some days when I'm stressed, it just doesn't work. And so you need multiple tools in your toolkit. A lot of people over rely on exercise as their only tool. It's dangerous. So what do you want to include in your toolkit? You want to have several things in your toolkit and you want to write them down. Have things that make you feel good. This always sounds like such an obvious thing, but the problem is when you're deep in the stress, you won't think of it. So things that make you happy, things that energize you, make you feel focused or calm. Things that are engaging, that are fun or interesting, or obsessions that you have. I'm really into bird watching and bird photography. If I'm having a really stressful day, I'll put some seeds out for the birds and I'll just go and watch the birds. It sounds stupidly simple, but it works for me. Things that provide positive connection. It could be nature, it could be your pet or other animals, it could be people, it could be watching Punch the Monkey videos on Instagram. And people, of course, if you have positive people, reach out to them. Things that you really care about, like if you're really into something, go and do a bit of that. Things that make you feel that you're growing and achieving and being successful and becoming a better person. Things that are good for your brain. If you're really stressed, people often reach for unhealthy food, but instead say to yourself, I'm stressed. What does my brain need now? It needs some healthy food. And then it needs, a quick walk after lunch. And it also needs some rest. Diaphragmatic breathing, like I mentioned earlier, it's kind of one of the entry level mindfulness practices. When I used to do neurofeedback therapy, within 1 to 2 minutes, diaphragmatic breathing starts to dramatically reduce stress. And then it could be sensory items like a weighted blanket or a fidget spinner. Even as adults, we can still use those things if they help us, or maybe a stress ball, something like that. So very quickly back to business. If you're in business, make stress visible and see it not as a failure, but as a red flag. If people are stressed, especially if there's multiple people are stressed, it's a red flag. Something is not right in your business. So you can't fix what you don't measure. So start here. Do stress specific pulse surveys. You can ask directly about overload, sleep, and mental recovery. A lot of companies do, anonymous surveys. Cross-reference hard data. Have a look. Has absenteeism gone up? Is turnover increasing? Are people making more mistakes? These tell the real story. Listen, have small group check-ins, manage your one-on-ones. And if you're getting midnight emails from your staff, that is a distress signal. That shouldn't be happening. And run a stress audit. Map the demands against the resources. Find out where the system is misaligned and causing people stress. And you need to fix the system, not the symptoms. And it begins at leadership level. Set real priorities. Stop rewarding heroic overwork. It is counterproductive in the long run. Model rest and recovery. Take your vacations. Take a lunch break. Embed stress checks into reviews. And then at the team level, end meetings early or on time. Create no meeting blocks. All the companies that I work with, I recommend that they have a block of at least 90 minutes every morning where meetings are avoided. It's a productivity hack. Make it safe to flag overload, and don't add things in, swap things out. At an individual level, corporate training, teach breathing, focus, and recovery rituals, and don't stop there. It's funny, the first time I ever did this training in a business, this big kind of what would you call him? The big American football type guy comes up to me at the end, and he's like, I was really annoyed when you said that we were going to do a mindfulness practice. I wouldn't have come if I'd known. And he said, but it was the best thing I've ever done. It was such a cool moment. So, if you're in a business, I highly encourage you to be doing, corporate trainings. The JFK quote of "A rising tide lifts all boats." Companies who engage in corporate training, it changes the culture of the business. And don't stop there. If the culture punishes rest, no amount of breath work will help. You're kind of putting a band-aid on the underlying broken leg. So implementation of a kind of wellness strategy or a stress management strategy in a business begins with phase one, awareness and measurement. Phase two is getting some quick wins and running a pilot study to see if this helps, and then structural role and workload changes, and then sustaining the change and keeping an eye on key indicators and also reviews. So that's what I would be doing if I went into a company. Proof that it works. I had one company that did my stress management boot camp, and we monitored the results. Within 60 days, the CFO said it wasn't about spending money, it's about better design and courageous leadership. And when I work with a company, I always say to them, the leaders must show up to the training. Leaders go first. And they showed that the research showed that there was a 38% drop in stress reported by the employees. Productivity rose by 17%, and turnover slowed down in the company in the few months after the training. So some final thoughts. Even the most successful leaders will be those who create environments where people can sustain results, not just drive them. This isn't about going hard for like 3 months and then everybody's burnt out. We want to have productivity that can be sustained. There is a cost to silence. If you don't have a culture where you can talk about this stuff, there will be turnover, there will be more sick days, and you will lose clients. It shows up on your balance sheet. I just did some interviews with the company that I work for, where I interview their clients, and every single client said that the company that I coach for had the best culture of any. They're a media and marketing company. They had the best culture of any media and marketing company they had ever worked with. Everybody said that. I interviewed 5 people, and that keeps clients. Be careful of what you're tolerating as normal. And, if you're a leader, act now. Act with data if you have it, collect it if you don't, with design and with courage. It takes bravery to deal with this stuff. So, what have we covered today? Why stress is bad for you and bad for business. We've talked about one of my favorite things, the science of stress, and hopefully I've given you like a beginner insight into the 4 steps to master stress. Focus on brain health, identifying and then reducing your triggers, Then get self-aware. Honestly, using that card is going to make a huge difference to your self-awareness. And then develop your toolkit so that when stress strikes, you have the tools available. And write them out. I forgot to mention that. Write them out so that they're available, because when you are stressed, when you're in that acute stress phase, you won't remember what you need to do. So, if you have enjoyed this and you're ready to go deeper, I have a 4-week stress management bootcamp. For individuals, it's $47 per person. I get told off by my coach for having it at that cost. But I actually designed it for businesses where I wanted a lot of people to do it. I do have, I will negotiate a group rate. I had a company recently of 150 people do it. Clearly, $47 per person would have been too much for them. So, if you're in a business where you want a lot of people to do it, just talk to me. And so this is the QR code and the link if you're interested in learning more about that and maybe even signing up. I'm doing these sessions, these freebie sessions, every month. The next one, I was mulling on what to talk about. We're going to talk about high performance leadership. It is one of my favorite things to talk about. I used to work for Tony Robbins. I didn't mention that earlier. And it was one of the best things I learned from Tony Robbins was about how to become a high performer. So I'm going to share that with you on the next call. That is the 1st of April. And there's the QR code and also the link for that. So wrapping up, what has been the most interesting thing you have learned or were reminded of today? And will you commit to making any changes? So write down your answers. I am going to stop the recording.